everyone, I'm Ashley.
I'm Nicole.
And we are Read With Me Sis, where we're going to give you weekly book reviews on YouTube and on Instagram and TikTok. Just a disclaimer, all of our video reviews that will be posted on YouTube will have spoilers. So if you don't want spoilers, head over to our Instagram and go ahead and give us a follow.
Click the link in the bio.
Link in bio, and don't forget to subscribe.
All right, so in this review, we will be talking about both book 1 and book 2 in the Crescent City series, so House of Earth and Blood and House of Sky and Breath. So we will be kicking off with Ashley talking about book 1.
All right, so Crescent City, if you don't already know, is a new series by Sarah J. Maas. We are going to start off with book 1, House of Earth and Blood, where we follow our main character, Bryce Quinlan. Bryce Quinlan is a half-fae, half-human, sometimes referred to as a party girl, and she's living in the bustling city of Crescent City. The narrative takes place in the city and takes a dark turn in the very beginning with Bryce's best friend being murdered. So we are going to really evolve into a murder mystery with this fantasy. There's a male main character. His name's Hunt, and Bryce teams up with him to solve this murder. We are going to dive into the seedy underbelly of Crescent City. We're going to uncover the truth behind the murder, but we're also going to uncover a ton of other truths while we figure out what happened to Danica. The world building in this is super rich. It is amazing. There's no shock there. Sarah J. Maas is the world building queen. So there's tons of that, but what's really exciting about this is it is taking place in an urban setting. So this is urban fantasy. We've got modern tech, modern government structures. It's much different from her other two series, Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, which everyone is a fan of. So with that being said, we can go ahead and dive into what our likes and our dislikes were for this book specifically. So Nicole, why don't you start out and tell me a few of your likes about this?
Oh, all right. Where do I start? There were so many. For one, I know that Ash just mentioned this, but the murder mystery aspect. So I feel like we don't see a lot of this in the fantasy genre. I know you like mysteries.
Love murder mystery.
She loves them. I am not a big murder mystery person. I'm big fantasy, so I like that this was different from normal fantasy books. The urban setting also was new to me. I typically wouldn't love the urban fantasy, but in this book, I mean, I think she just did it perfectly. So those were two big things for me that I really didn't think I was going to enjoy, but I really did.
Yeah, it's definitely, I mean, the urban fantasy creates a different realm of world building. I personally would say that is one of my biggest likes, and I'm not an urban fantasy person. I love high fantasy. I like the swords and like old school weapons, and it's so different. They have cell phones, they have SUVs.
Yeah, really,
the SUVs. I mean, very weird. It's such a different experience from what you're used to with Sarah J. Maas. So 100% the urban fantasy aspect was great. But I would say one of my biggest likes was the political structure that you got to see within this book. Not only did you have some really interesting world building, but within Crescent City, there's a really cool political structure in place. We have governors. We have the Asteri, which you'll find out exactly who the Asteri is once you get a little bit deeper into this book. We have all these other factions within the city. We've got shapeshifters, we've got fae, we've got mer people underwater, there's a river queen. So there's a lot of really cool politics that are coming out in this storyline as well. And while you're getting that murder mystery, you're slowly peeling back the layers of the politics and this entire world that you're starting to learn.
To build off the politics, I really like that there was structure within the city already. You have the archangels and then the angels, who are pretty much like the police. They do like everything, detectives, police, but then also outside of that, within each neighborhood of the city, they have their own almost like mayor, I guess I would say, of like that city. So for example, like Danica, the Pack of Wolves, they are another, like they are detectives. They, you know, they capture bad guys. So I think they did a really good job just structuring everything within the city. And
yeah, it kind of reminds me of like, you know, where you have your local police force and they sometimes might work with the FBI if things get a little too crazy. And it was definitely set up that way, where I would say the angels and archangels were like FBI.
FBI, for sure, FBI.
Like higher tier government. And then you have like the wolves and the fae, and each of them have their own factions of like, I guess peacemakers and policing, detectives.
They do it all. And again, very urban. Not something I would normally be into in a fantasy book, but SJM, again.
Very good job.
Crushed it.
Always. Amazing.
Always.
Also, something that was a little different for SJM was the multiple points of view. Huge surprise for me. I have read Throne of Glass, Throne of Glass, Throne of Glass and ACOTAR, which so have you.
Yes.
And in those books, Throne of Glass, you do get different point of views, but you don't get an omniscient narrative. Like, you don't get to see two different points of views from people in the exact same scene. Whereas in Crescent City, you do. You get multiple point of views in the same scene. You know, when there's scenes with Bryce and Hunt, you know what Bryce is thinking and what Hunt's thinking in this specific scene. But we also have a ton of characters. Like, there can be, obviously Bryce is the FMC in this book, and Hunt is the MMC. Love Hunt. But you have scenes that don't even include them. Like, we have other characters that this has branched out into.
Multiple point of views.
And that's really cool too, because you get Rune, you get Therian.
I think with like the multiple points of views, you really get a good feel for the character itself. Like the emotions, just like the playfulness that is Bryce, the seriousness that is Hunt, the little playboy that is Rune. Like, she does such a good job of just like really putting you into those characters. Even though it's jumping around so much, you still get a really good feel of who they are and like how they contribute to the story, and how the characters play off of each other.
Also, I think it lets us get more world building faster.
Correct.
You know, I feel like when we read ACOTAR, the world building was there and it was great, but it was slow rolling because we're learning everything with the character.
Yes.
And you made this comment earlier when we were talking about it. We don't have to learn that slow. We start off like right away you're thrown into this world.
Bryce is a finesser of Crescent City. She has been there. She has done it all. She has seen it all. You are in the world. I mean, like, she just jumps in. And that is really different than what she does in a lot of her other books. I mean, you build with the story, I think. And here the story is already a lot of it built.
Yes.
So that was a love-hate for me for sure, I think, because it takes a little bit more to catch up. You have to really pay attention within like the first 100 pages
especially
of the book.
in the first 100 pages.
You have to focus.
I
had to keep notes, actually. So.
Also, a mutual, I don't even want to say like about this, a mutual love about this book is the slow burn romance.
We love a slow burn.
We love a slow burn romance. And you get probably one of the slowest burn romances that Sarah J. Maas has written. And when I say that, I mean, you don't get really, so sorry to say this, but you don't get hardly any smut in this book. When it's there, it's good, but it is such a slow burn romance. But she really does take you on a journey. And I think as the main characters are falling in love with each other, like, you are also falling in love with them.
100%. I mean, I can't tell you the amount of pages I marked where like I could tell they were falling in love before like they could tell they were falling in love. And I just loved every second of it. I think the forced proximity trope is also one of my favorites.
It's there.
And it's there in multiple ways. I mean, you get first the bodyguard trope. Which we love a good bodyguard trope.
Love a bodyguard trope.
And then you get the roommate trope.
Oh my God, I almost forgot about the roommate.
Enough said.
It's so good. So yeah, we got some slow burn romance going in here, and we are here for it.
100%. I'm here for it. I'm also here for all the emotions that came with this book. Every single one. The good and the bad.
This is an understatement when I say, like, buckle up, because you are in for a ride. I am not someone that often cries while reading books.
She doesn't. I don't know what's wrong with her.
I don't know. Maybe I have no soul. I have no idea.
I cry every other page in any book.
I'm not a crier when it comes to reading. I definitely feel all the emotions when I'm reading, but this book had me physically weeping. Mm-hmm. I had to set it down. I had to pick it back up after I had dried my eyes. If you already follow us, you probably saw
my reaction video. I could cry talking about it. I was so unwell. It was
so, oh my God, but so good in all the best ways, even though it did absolutely rip your heart out in so many parts of this book. It was just so good.
Specifically, the last 200 pages, though.
Can we just take a second to appreciate how somehow, in some magical way, Sarah J. Maas can fit a million different things, mm-hmm. a million different conclusions in the last 200 pages of her book without it feeling rushed. Not once do I finish it and say, oh my God, that was too much that happened in the last 200 pages. It almost just like made sense for all of these things to happen.
It shouldn't make sense.
It shouldn't, because it really is. I mean, when I tell you, like, this is a slow burn book and, like, you get the payoff at the end, I mean, you get every payoff. You are wealthy at the end of this book.
With tears.
With tears. But also happy tears, too. It's not just sad tears.
All the tears.
But you get such a payoff. I mean, can you just take us through all the things that happened at the end of this book?
I actually wrote it down. I had a timeline because I was so shook.
It is insane.
So let me just tell you guys real quick.
Again, big spoilers.
Lots of spoilers. This is every spoiler ever, so just know that going into this.
Please stop the video if you don't want spoilers.
So it really kicks off towards the end when Bryce finds Hunt on the boat. Okay.
Yes.
So kicks off, Hunt betrays Bryce. Then we find out that Danica killed herself according to Hunt. And then Hunt gets bought by Sandriel for betraying them, obviously. And then Micah sneaks off to attack Bryce so he can get her to open the gates of hell because Bryce is the horn or has the horn in her. And then we find out that Micah actually killed Danica and the Pack of Devils. And then Syrinx almost dies, but Bryce fights off the creature, the Noki, to save him. Mm-hmm. That was intense. Then HoEaB dies. Come on.
Can you just take a moment for HoEaB?
R.I.P. my girl.
I mean, moment of silence for HoEaB.
And then... last 200 pages.
It is...
back to back to back to back.
Insane. Like, it's almost laughable when you actually list it out. Which is the magic of SJM. Because listing it out, you're like, there's no way all that happened. And I'd have to go back. We could fact check this later. It might not be exactly 200 pages, but it is within that realm of like 200 plus pages. I mean, this is like...
yeah, if not shorter than that, honestly.
I mean, it's really amazing. And she does this time and time again. If you guys have read her ACOTAR series, if you've read her Throne of Glass series, she does this in such an impeccable way. Really, it just is a testament to her.
Yeah, I mean, it's like a running joke that like the last 100 to 200 pages of any SJM book is just going to emotionally destroy you.
Yeah, it will. It will emotionally destroy you, but it will probably also put you back together before she ends it.
Unless the next book isn't out.
Oh,
with that being said, 0 dislikes.
I have nothing bad to say about this book. I racked my brain just to try to find one negative piece of this book that bothered me. And I don't say this lightly, this is probably at least top 3 favorite books of the SJM universe. I mean...
100% for me as well.
Yes. And I'm not going to give it the best series yet. I can't do that. I still feel like No, it's not finished. And Throne of Glass... I feel like it's going to be really hard for something to replace that for me. But this book was a masterpiece. I mean, I don't know if a book has ever made me cry like this book has made me cry.
I cry a lot, so I can't say that. But
I wish I could go back and read this again for the first time.
Oh, same. 100%.
I mean, it just was so good. I'll probably reread this as soon as I finish book 3. Like, I love this. I love this book so much.
It was so good. So good. Let us remember this moment, SJM fans, okay? Because we are also SJM fans.
We love her.
My girl.
We love her.
My queen. She can do no wrong in my eyes.
And with that being said,
let's get into book 2.
Because we might have some controversial.
Stay with us.
Yes. Don't hate us when we review book 2. Because
unapologetic book reviews. Let's just remember that. Unprofessional and unapologetic book reviews. Keep that in your head, okay? We are going to start off with the likes of this book.
We will. Yeah, we'll start out with the likes because we did like this book. That I think we should throw that out there. We loved this book. We did love. I loved this book too.
I mean, Hunt and Bryce are just.
It's just when you start a series with something like this,
a true masterpiece.
You're setting the bar high.
High.
And when you follow it with this, you're gonna get some feedback. You're gonna get some feedback, at least from us.
Yeah. So let's make that clear. We are SJM fans.
We love her.
Clearly,
we love.
I will go ahead and just do a little recap of kind of what book 2 followed. That way you guys know there will be spoilers in the rest of this review as well. So keep that in mind. So in House of Sky and Breath, we do follow Bryce and Hunt as they are attempting to have a normal relationship and just figure out what the future holds for them after everything that was House of Earth and Blood. So we are introduced to some new characters, which brings us into another mystery type situation. Bryce and Hunt are trying to stay away from being in the spotlight with the Asteri, but somehow get sucked into the rebel plans. We also get a lot of information on Rune and his lineage, which was awesome. And shocker, we learned that Danica has more secrets. Are we surprised? More secrets. And those secrets reach far beyond just Lunathian. With that being said, let's get into it. Likes and dislikes. Ashley, start us off.
All right, my likes, and I think you already said this in some of your summary, was just the introduction to new characters. I mean, we did get so many new names that came into this. In book 1, they talk about the ongoing war that's happening between the Asteri, the Archangels, and the human rebels. But we really didn't get into too much of that world. We got a little bit of Hunt's background in it, but not a ton. In book 2, we really get to merge those two sides of the world. We get introductions to the rebels. We get introductions to Sandriel's Triari. Finally, the dreaded Triari. Or are they dreaded? But we get a lot of really new names, some additional world building. I mean, everything that I loved about this book, I mean, she really did deliver in book 2. I really do think that, again, like, that's just something that SJM does. Like, she's so good with world building, and we got some expansion on that.
Yeah, I agree. I did like that she brought in a lot of characters that were mentioned in book 1 and kind of give them more of an in-depth character in book 2. Rune Danan, Prince of the Valbaran Fae, my whole heart and soul. That was incredible. We got to see a lot of him, more about him and his background, his romance even. I think this book really had a lot of romance in it because you don't just get Bryce and Hunt, you get Rune as well and his story with Queen Hypaxia and then Agent Day. So there is a lot of good things too happening with Rune. And Ethan. Cute little Ethan.
Ethan comes back in the picture in book 2.
Didn't think I was going to love Ethan. He was kind of a douchebag from the first book, if you remember.
Yeah.
But I think that she wrote his character very well. I do love his growth and his progression. I think I got very, very emotional. I told Ash when I was reading about him, like, realizing that Declan and Tristan are his friends. Because he had no friends.
So sweet.
So I really did like Ethan and Rune's story. And just the introduction of the rebels. I mean, it gives it a whole new depth, introducing the rebels at play and how they play into the world as well. So lots of new characters, lots of good things happening there. The world building.
Yeah, I mean, really just, I know we already said that, but we get so much more background on the Viper Queen and her world and her, part of the city. We get, more Asteri. We start to really uncover a lot of these, like, secrets and, like, assumptions that you got in book 1, unanswered questions in book 1. let's just say they all get answered.
Yeah.
For the most part, not everything. There's still questions, but like a lot of the major ones, you get answers about the Asteri and who they really are. And then also the Underking and the Bone Quarter. Like we get, you know, more details about that and what part that plays in Crescent City and with all of the veneer. So yeah, really cool world building.
We also got more Danica. I do want to bring that up as well, which
we did get more Danica.
Love Danica.
Danica was a little secret keeper. She was
a little
super.
Okay.
She was working behind the scenes a lot. And even though Bryce was her BFF, Bryce didn't know fucking shit about Danica.
More people knew more about Danica than Bryce did. I mean, there were so many secrets you find about Danica, and we're already doing spoilers, so we might as well just list a couple off. Because it was really insane, the amount. I mean, so you find out her dad is Mordock, right? And then you find out she had a mate, Baxian.
Yeah. Who you do meet, again, another character, part of the Triari, who you think is a bad guy, but really isn't a bad guy.
You find out she's working with the rebels, kind of. Yeah, I mean, no, she was.
She was for sure working with the rebels.
I'm sure there's more, but just like, there was more Danica, and I did love that.
So much more Danica. I was happy because I was so bummed in book 1 when Danica got killed off so quick. I mean, really, it's like the first couple chapters, like Danica's dead, and you're heartbroken because even in just a couple chapters, like, you fall in love with her. Like, she's so fun. Like, she's like your BFF. Like, you can see like how her and Bryce are so close.
Yeah, and she was such a huge part of Bryce's life. It is, once you read book 2 and you kind of get a more understanding of who Danica was, it really gives you an appreciation for their friendship. Even though she had a lot of secrets, there was a lot of times when it was like people telling Bryce, like, she loved you more than anything.
Yes.
Like, even though this was a secret, you were her person. Like, so I did like that. More Danica. More relationships just in general, I think, in this book.
Yeah.
There was a lot of connecting between characters. Again, Ethan, Flynn, Declan. We get Cormac, who Rune and Cormac had a little bromance towards the end. They did build their relationship back a little bit. And then obviously Bryce with Ethan, Bryce with Rune, Bryce with Hunt. Lots of Bryce.
Cormac's the cousin of Bryce and Rune. And there is a weird incestual engagement in book 2.
Yeah, they're not really like, I don't think they're really...
They're like very distant cousins.
Cousins through Rune almost.
Yes.
So I did like more relationships outside of romance, I think would be my biggest thing. Like, outside of just your normal romantic-y relationships, there was a lot to appreciate, I think.
Yeah, I think this, like, all of the relationships that you start to see forming in book 2, it really did give me Throne of Glass vibes. And all of just, like, the friendships that get formed. So we are getting a lot of that. Like, it's not just, even though book 2 was really heavy on the romance between Bryce and Hunt, you also got so many, you know, extra non-romantic feels from the relationships in those books. So great job with that.
Lots of good stuff.
I feel like we have to keep repeating ourselves because we are about to get in the weeds about the things we did not like about this
I'm
book.
going to dig myself a hole with y'all SJM diehard fans.
Yes, don't hate us. This is our first video, so don't hate us.
I don't want to be hated. I just want to tell my opinion.
Yes.
I love SJM. That's my number one opinion, by the way, just before we start.
Yeah, so let's get into some of our dislikes of book 2 because there were many, at least for me. I struggled with this book a little bit. As much as I love the story and the world building, there was a lot of plot. Almost too much plot, maybe?
Yeah.
I think too much plot, felt very rushed. We got introductions to people that...
Let's just talk about it. Sophie and Emil.
Let's
just get into it, because... Come on.
Sophie and Emil. So Sophie and Emil are two characters that we meet kind of like early on in the book. In the prologue, you get an introduction to Sophie. She is a rebel, and she is also kind of she's like a rebel spy, per se, but she has a brother who's Emil. And Emil plays into a big part of the mystery aspect of this book because he goes missing. Like, he is the whole mystery. Most of the book is literally everybody looking for a meal. Bryce is looking for a meal. You know, Rune is. Cormac is.
The Queen.
The River Queen is, you know, Therian.
The Rebels.
The Rebels. Everyone is looking
for a meal.
They
think he has powers. So Sophie had powers that were very old, or she was a Thunderbird. So that plays a big part into who Sophie is. You think you're supposed to believe she dies. So then Emil gets away. And then they spent this whole time searching for Emil and Sophie, because at one point you're meant to think, so she dies, and then you think she's alive because they couldn't find her body. Yeah, it was gone. You're kind of going on this whole wild goose chase, trying to find Emil, find Sophie, who's alive, who has powers, where are they?
And then what happens? We find out in a very quick chapter that Bryce has been doing a lot of off-page shenanigans, found Emil before everybody else, and somehow has gotten the Viper Queen to help her, and now he is living with her parents and have been adopted by her parents.
Sure.
But how did we even get there? It's like no one really knows. A lot of this is off-page. It's almost like SJM kind of like didn't understand really how to solve the mystery. So she did it off page and then gave you like a word vomited synopsis of how Bryce did it. Mm-hmm. And I just, being a mystery thriller novel fan, like I read a lot of mystery thrillers, like you cannot solve a mystery like that. I mean, you cannot, if there's things that are happening off page, that's fine, but there needs to be like breadcrumbs here and there leading up to the big reveal of, you know, the mystery being solved. And I just felt like it was also shortchanging Emil. I mean, we got really no...
He has no powers.
He has no powers that we know of. To be fair, book 3, there could be something else about Emil. I mean, obviously he's here to stay. He's now Bryce's adopted brother.
We know SJM always... She doesn't do things for no reason, but right now it's feeling like there was no reason.
It did feel lackluster.
Sophie is dead. Apparently, we find out... So Sophie's dead. Wild goose chase. Sophie's dead. Emil has no powers, and now he lives with Bryce's parents. But it all happened very fast.
Yeah.
You spend this whole half of the book invested in this mystery for it to almost feel...
Mm-hmm. There's just a lot. There's a lot happening. I know I had told Nicole prior to shooting this video, I feel like this book could have been 2 books because she could have really elaborated on a lot of the different plot points. Because Emil is just like one plot point. I mean, that's just one thing that is like resolved in this book. There's so many other things happening. And I do feel like the rebels, if you're going to introduce them, do them justice. I felt no emotional connection to Sophie or Emil.
Or Cormac, for that matter. I mean, so let's talk about emotional letdown, right? Yeah. I think in book 1, Lihaba's death crushed me.
Yeah.
Crushed me. I mean, like hyperventilating, sobbing. But in book 2, if we're comparing the deaths, right, because they happen around the same time in the books where you're supposed to have all these feelings, Cormac dies and like, I don't really even understand his death or like if I'm supposed to really care that much. Like I feel I had no emotional connection to a lot of these characters that they introduced to us. So once they were gone, it just didn't feel like I was losing anything. Like, should have more of an emotional attachment to Cormac and Cormac dying, but I just didn't.
I didn't either.
Like, he's not a bad guy.
He's not. I mean, he comes off, his character comes off annoying in the beginning, but like he has a little bit of a redemption from being the asshole. And, you know, the other thing too is that she uncovers that Cormac and Sophie had a relationship with each other because Cormac is also a rebel. And when you finally get uncovered that Sophie is dead and Cormac is there to see her, I mean, I feel like you should have been emotionally moved by that, but because there was really no investment, I feel like, or enough investment from SJM to those characters, it just fell flat. Like, I was not really moved at all by the scene of him, like, going to see her dead body.
Yeah. And I think, again, that might come back to a lot of things being off page, right? Yeah. Because you don't get to experience them together. Yep. You don't get to experience them falling in love or being in love or really anything. You don't get to experience that. So I think then when it came to the characters themselves, dying or finding out each other died. It was like,
yeah,
okay, I'm a little sad for you for sure, but it didn't hit me hard.
Yeah, I mean, and that's not even the only characters that you kind of get this like anticlimactic moment when you finally get the resolution to what's going to happen to them. I mean, we also get that with Pippa's Rebel Squad. I mean, you get introduced to this, you know, character Pippa, who is a rebel, but she's kind of like the super extreme rebel where she's just going to murder you, like if it helps her cause, and murder innocents if it helps her cause. And so you do get an introduction to her, and she, at the end of the book, I mean, her and her squad are like blown up when, you know, Cormac blows everybody up, and he obviously like gives his own life to whatever. And it's like, again, like, it's like they lived and died, but there was nothing there to really get you invested in like them as a whole unit, to even be excited about their deaths. I mean, we knew that you're not supposed to like Pippa. Pippa's a bad guy. She's one of the villains in this book. But like, when a villain like that dies, you're also like kind of excited.
Yeah.
And I just feel like it was rushed, to kind of wrap up that plot point. And that is why I feel like I stand by this book should have been 2 books. I just feel like we could have gotten so much more emotion out of it. We could have been so much more invested in the characters, even the characters that are no longer going to maybe continue into the books, or even if they do continue, like we should probably even be more attached to them if we're going to get them in book 3. And we just didn't get that. I mean, she didn't give that to us in this book.
Yeah. And again, Sarah is always a long con person, so we might eat our words in the future. But as of right now, I just really didn't get the emotions I wanted to from this book.
Yeah.
I think another thing that for me was a little bit of a letdown was the amount of masculine energy. I mean, all the main points of view are Bryce, Hunt, Rune, Therian, and Ethan. And there might be a couple randoms thrown in there, but like those are the main ones. So you have Bryce and 4 males. This wouldn't be a bad thing, except for where I want to see more Hypaxia. I want to see more Celestina, more Fury. More
oh my Fury. God. That is my biggest complaint about this book. Give me more Fury. If there is not more Fury in book 3, I'm about to have some serious problems with SJM.
I need more Fury, but I just need more. I needed more heart. In book 1, Bryce is the heart of the story. Bryce is a baddie. She's an independent party girl, but also a boss bitch. Like, we love Bryce. I don't think I got that. And again, it goes back to being things off page, but like, I don't think I got that. And like, I know for us, at least, that's why we all love SJM. Yeah. She gives us those independent female main characters, side characters. She does such a good job writing such a great, independent, badass female main character. And I just did not get that from this book. No. It was a little bit disappointing.
And there are enough female characters in this story to have given us a point of view with maybe additional females. I mean, there's enough. You have Celestina, you have Hypaxia, you have Fury, you have Juniper.
2 LGBTQ couples. And I couldn't get one point of view, please.
I know.
For the queer community. My God.
I know.
I'm begging.
I was so disappointed in that. I was like, we have these really amazing, strong, independent lesbian couples in this book, and we are getting no POVs for them. What is going on?
I got all the straight sex that I could ever want in this book. Not a bad thing, but I needed a little bit of the queer representation more than just like finding 2 people having sex in a closet.
More than just side stories. Yeah, I would have liked to have seen a main story, at least from Fury. I mean, really, I want to see Fury in June. I really hope we get more Fury in June in book 3.
Yeah.
Because Fury's obviously a badass. And I just feel like she didn't get enough attention in book 2. Or book 1, even. She was so elusive in book 1.
But I think there's definitely a reason for that.
There is. Again, we have our Fury theories.
Oh, I like the ring of that. I also think that with Hypaxia and Celestina being so high up in command, Queen and Archangel, maybe there was a lot that we're going to find out that was going on behind scenes, so they couldn't give us that point of view. But again, Bryce was doing a lot of things off scene, and we were still getting her point of view. Don't hate us. I mean, I love Sarah. I just could not. Comparing book 1 to book 2 is just not possible.
Going back to just talking about how amazing SJM does at like wrapping things up and giving you everything you've been waiting for at the very end without it feeling rushed. She didn't do that with this book. And it was such a shocker because it's just not her. The ending to this book just felt so rushed to the point where like we ended with the long-awaited Maasverse crossover into ACOTAR, which...
Who else got... Just like, as soon as you see the name rescind on a page... Oh my god.
So, we've been waiting for this, and I was so bummed that it had to happen in a book that I was like, oh my god, I'm so rushed through this, and I'm so overwhelmed, and now I'm ending this way. Now that we just said all of our dislikes, we can end with our biggest like. And that was the Maasverse,
crossover.
The finally getting the crossover. And I'm so excited that we're crossing over into ACOTAR, because my girl Aylin's been through it. So I think that
we leave her alone for a little bit.
Yeah, she needs a break. Let her live in peace for a little bit.
Even if we do somehow cross-verse everything.
Which I think will happen.
I absolutely have some theories that I do think that will happen, yes. But I do think we should let Aylin be for a little bit.
Yes.
I do think there's a lot going on within the universe. I think that we found out a lot of stuff about the Asteri in book 2, about them, you know, being this long con game.
Yeah.
Where they have been controlling everything and everyone in every, it almost feels like book that SJM has written.
Yeah.
But every universe. And I'm really excited to see where that goes.
Yeah. And also, I mean, we all missed our ACOTAR characters. I mean, I know my favorite series was Stone or Glass, but a lot of you SJM fans out there, like your favorite, I know, is ACOTAR. And we have been missing those characters. So we do finally get to be reunited with all of our characters from ACOTAR when Bryce accidentally goes through a portal that she opens thinking that she's trying to get to hell.
Correct.
And lands in Prithian and stumbles upon no other Asriel. And it was really exciting to read that. I will say, as frustrated as I was with this book and how crazy the plot got and how confusing I felt at times, it was a pretty good payoff at the end.
Chills.
Because I've been waiting for this. We've had so many Easter eggs in her series about a Maasverse and, you know, things crossing over at some point and multiple worlds. And she finally gave that to us. And I am so excited to see where it goes in book 3. So excited.
Yeah, I mean, book 3 comes out tomorrow, and I think I'm going to take, tomorrow night at midnight? Tuesday, might take the full day off. Yeah. Just because I need to know what happens.
Yes, please. Our bosses, don't watch this video.
Yes. If I don't get answers about something with the Maasverse in book 3, I might riot because the theories that I have, so many theories.
Before we end with this video, I think we got to just go ahead and give our star ratings for each of these books.
Yeah.
5. I feel like we are in agreement. This is top tier. Again, one of my favorite SJM books of all time. Out of all the series I've read, I mean, this is just amazing. Good job, Sarah. And
I'm going 4.5 stars because, again, Sarah's just a phenomenal writer. I think she does a terrific job. She's a great storyteller. And it's just everything that you love. But just, you know, it could have been a little more.
I agree with 4.5. I would say, like, that's my exact same rating. I think as soon as I finished reading it, I filled out a review online for it. And I feel like we said a lot of negative things about this book. But again, I just want to reiterate that it's because we just have such a high standard for SJM, because her writing is always just phenomenal. With this being said, this book is still amazing. I mean, it is an amazing story. There is a ton of stuff going on in this book that does sometimes get confusing, which is why I knocked it like a half star. But overall, I mean, I highly recommend, highly recommend. You guys need to read this series. You will get absolutely lost in this. Take some time for yourself, check out of the real world, and just dive into this because you will not regret it. All right, guys. Well, we will be dropping a new video next week after we finish book 3. So please hit subscribe and come read with us, sis.